Work hard in silence. If you're busy telling everybody what you're fixin' to do, you ain't got time to actually do it. Folks, let me tell you something. These days, a lot of people spend more time talking about the life they want than living it. They post it, they brag on it, they make announcements like they're running for office. I'm gonna start a business. I'm gonna write a book. I'm hit in the gym. But here's the truth. Real work makes no noise. When the old ranch hands used to break horses, they didn't say a word. They just saddled up, got throwed a few times, and kept getting back on till the horse gave in. They didn't have to go tell the town what they were doing. The proof was in the saddle sores and the sweat-soaked shirts. You see, a man who works hard in silence isn't quiet because he's got nothing to say. He's quiet because he's busy doing what needs done. The world don't need more noise, it needs more action. Don't waste your energy trying to impress folks who ain't walking your trail. Keep your head down, your hands calloused, and your boots muddy. Let your success be the sound that breaks the silence. When harvest comes, people will notice. They'll see the fruit, but they won't have seen the long days, the hard falls, the early mornings, and the late nights. That's all right, you'll know, and that's enough. So don't go chasing applause. Go chase excellence and do it quietly, because when a man is truly good at what he doesn't need to shout it. The results do the talking. 1. Silence builds focus. Focus is not a skill that is simply summoned by will or productivity. Hacks, it is an alignment of the psyche, a unification of the many voices within into a singular act of being. The outer silence serves as a mirror, reflecting the chaos or coherence that exists within. Only in silence can one come to know what is truly there. Noise, external or internal, acts as a veil over our deeper reality. In the world of constant distraction, self becomes fragmented, divided between the demands of the world and the longing of the soul. Your full outward peace and validate this outward pull into interior flame. Fire of focus and stillness. Not disturbed, comparison, clamoring of attention. Persons choosing to work in silence, they are choosing ascent. Ascent. Distractions fall away by disease. Silence itself reveals the truth. It makes obvious the truth that no one else. But this silence is not merely the absence of noise. It is an active condition of space carved out by courage, by listening, and by sacrifice. It is a sanctuary where the many selves speak to each other, where the unconscious and conscious come to dialogue. In silence, we encounter our doubts, our fears, our shadows, all that a hidden might avoid in the busy. Focus arises not just from attention, but from focus. This is why silence is often feared. It reveals too much, and yet what it reveals is the very truth needed to progress. Without this confrontation with self, the worker becomes aimless, easily diverted, pulled into shallow tasks that feel urgent but are hollow. Focus, in this deeper sense, is not the narrowing of attention, but the sharpening of purpose. To work in silence is to make a pact with the sacred. One agrees to go inward, to listen not to the applause of the world, but to the voice of necessity what must be done, not for recognition, but for integration. This is where the true work begins, when one labors not just to build something outside, but to become something within. Consider the craftsman shaping wood in solitude. With each motion of the hand, something in the soul is also shaped. The act is not merely technical, it is alchemical. The silence becomes a crucible where ego is burned away, where intention is purified, and where attention deepens into meaning. The product becomes secondary, the transformation is primary. To build focus through silence is to accept that the greatest battles are not fought on stages, but in the quiet corners of the mind and heart. Distractions do not come only from outside sources, they rise from within, each one a part of ourselves that has not yet been reconciled. To focus is to gather these parts, to become whole, and to direct the unified self toward a meaningful goal. So, one must learn to guard their silence with the same devotion as a priest guards the altar. Let the world go on speaking, let the noise run its course. There is power in not responding. There is clarity in not reacting. And there is freedom in choosing stillness over spectacle. When silence is honored, focus emerges not as a technique, but as a state of being. And in that being, great work is done, work that speaks for itself long after the worker is gone. 2. Let results speak. There is a deep hunger in the modern soul to be witnessed, to be seen, acknowledged, affirmed. And yet, the true measure of one's being is not in the proclamations they make, but in the quiet trail of reality left behind them. Results are not ornaments to display. They are evidence of inner alignment. They speak with the authority that words never fully can. When one labors from the authentic center of the self, not from ego, not from insecurity, but from necessity, the outcome carries the weight of truth. That truth does not require defense, argument, or applause. It exists, and what exists truly does not need to shout. A tree does not announce its fruit, it simply bears it. To let results speak is to embrace the humility of reality. It means releasing the urge to convince others of your worth, and instead allowing the work to reveal your essence. This is not passivity, it is the highest form of discipline, for it requires trust in the process, trust in time, and most of all, trust in the self that is doing the work. Often people speak not to inform, but to cover their own doubt. They speak their plans to make them feel real. They broadcast their goals to gather assurance. But when the soul is sure deeply, silently sure, it needs no such reinforcement. It moves like a river, steady, unseen in its origins, but inevitable in its flow. There is great spiritual danger in becoming addicted to the reactions of others. The more you seek validation through visibility, the more you hand over your identity to the collective. The self becomes diluted, its direction distorted by the whims of public opinion. But the one who works in silence and lets their work unfold on its own preserves something sacred, the sanctity of inner authority. Results, when they come from this place, are not just achievements. They are manifestations. They are the outer reflection of inner integration. They carry the resonance of a life lived in alignment, of actions rooted in values rather than vanity. And because of this, they resonate. People may not always understand how or why, but they feel the presence of something real. But this path requires patience. Results come slowly when they are real. There is no shortcut to authenticity, no fast forward button to mastery. The fruit takes time, and in that time one must resist the urge to speak prematurely. There is a season for sowing and a season for harvesting. Speaking before results mature is like cutting the fruit before it ripens bitter and unready. To let results speak is also an act of psychological detachment. It is the refusal to make one's work a mirror for the ego. When you are no longer trying to prove your worth through outcomes, you are free to focus entirely on the task. Paradoxically, this freedom often leads to better results because the work is no longer burdened by performance. It becomes pure. There is another reason for silence, reverence. When you are engaged in something meaningful, truly meaningful, it becomes sacred, and the sacred does not tolerate excess noise. Think of the ancient temples, where silence was not just expected, but demanded. The inner temple of your work deserves the same respect. Let it grow undisturbed. Let it take shape in the mystery of silence. And when the time comes, when the work is finished, the structure built, the fruit ready, it will speak. And it will speak clearly. Those who doubted will hear it. Those who watched in silence will feel it. And you, the worker, will know the silence was not emptiness. It was power. It was preparation. It was protection. So do not rush to be heard. Instead, become undeniable. Let your life be the loudest thing about you. Let your actions echo long after your words are forgotten. And most of all, let the work be enough whether anyone notices or not. Because if it came from the deepest place within you, it already carries a voice stronger than anything you could say. 3. Discipline grows in the dark. There is a profound illusion in our modern psyche that transformation must be visible to be real. We assume that growth must be shared, documented, displayed as if the mere act of being seen validates the struggle. But truthfully, the most essential metamorphoses occur in the dark, hidden from sight, protected by shadow, and nurtured in silence. Discipline, in its purest form, does not thrive under the spotlight. It is not spectacle. It is the steady devotion to something unseen, a promise kept when no one is watching, a task completed without applause, a truth lived when it would be easier not to. It is forged in the deep interior of the self, where the conscious mind meets the unconscious impulses and where chaos is slowly brought into order. The dark is not a place of failure, it is a womb. In nature, all significant creation begins there, the seed in soil, the child in the womb, the diamond in pressure beneath the earth. In the dark, the soul is stripped of distraction. It cannot rely on external validation or social mirrors. In that deprivation, something rare emerges: autonomy of will. To become disciplined is not to become rigid or mechanical. It is to become whole. It is to bring the fragmented self, the part that dreams and the part that resists, into alignment through repeated intentional acts. Each act of discipline is an act of self-unity. It is the psyche saying to itself, "We move forward together." But the darkness tests this unity. It is there that the voices of doubt grow louder, the archetypes of the saboteur, the critic, the coward all awaken. They whisper of comfort, of quitting, of choosing the easy over the essential. To remain steadfast in such a place is not merely a matter of grit, it is an act of spiritual resistance. The ego must yield to something greater than itself. One cannot rush discipline. It is not imposed from outside, like a punishment. It grows from within, like roots, slow, silent, and strong. And just like roots, it is often invisible until much later, when the fruits begin to appear. This is why the impatient rarely become masters of anything. They flee the darkness before the roots can hold. In this hidden place, failures are not signs of weakness. They are initiations. To fall short in private, and to rise again without recognition, this is sacred labor. The discipline that emerges from such cycles is not brittle, it is resilient. It does not shatter under pressure. It bends, learns, adjusts, and persists. Our culture praises those who perform discipline outwardly, waking at 5 a.m., showing their routines, tracking their metrics. But these are surface signs. True discipline is quiet. It needs no audience, because its purpose is not to impress, it is to transform. Transformation is not always beautiful to look at. Often it is brutal. It requires confrontation with the self, with laziness, fear, anger, and grief. But only through this descent into the dark can one emerge renewed. To embrace the darkness as a place of growth is to reclaim a lost truth, that what is hidden is not necessarily weak. The soul often withdraws to gather strength. The hero of any true myth does not ascend before they descend. The cave, the underworld, the forest, these are symbols of the same truth. The work is done in the dark. And so, let your discipline grow away from the noise. Let it grow in the hours before dawn. Let it grow when you choose to show up for the task even when no one will notice. Let it grow when your motivation is gone but your commitment remains. These moments, though unseen, shape the very structure of your being. Eventually, what was forged in the dark will come to light, and when it does, it will carry with it the quiet strength of someone who has faced themselves and kept going. So do not fear the dark, enter it willingly. There, discipline waits, not as a taskmaster, but as a guide that leads not to recognition, but to wholeness. For attention is a distraction. There is a hidden hunger in the human psyche. a desire not just to be seen, but to be affirmed, applauded, validated. At its core, this desire is not inherently wrong. It stems from a longing to belong, to matter. But when this longing becomes dominant, when attention is pursued as a substitute for purpose, it becomes a great distraction, one that slowly separates the self from its center. To chase attention is to scatter the soul. The world now offers countless mirrors. At every moment, one can look outward and ask, how am I doing? Do they approve? Am I enough? These mirrors reflect not the truth of who we are, but the expectations of the crowd. And the more we stare into them, the more we become actors adapting, posing, performing until our true voice is drowned beneath layers of persona. Attention, like fire, can warm or burn. A small amount may spark courage. But too much consumes. It distorts. It breeds addiction to visibility, a constant need to be noticed, which replaces the inner journey with a restless campaign for relevance. What begins as a desire to share soon becomes a dependence. You start to shape your actions not by what is right, or necessary, or true, but by what will be seen. Slowly, the compass shifts. The work loses its soul, and the worker forgets why they began in the first place. To free oneself from the distraction of attention is to return to the sacred interior, the realm where decisions are made not in the light of others' eyes, but in the presence of the self, that deeper, unchanging center that knows what must be done, even when the world does not understand. The paradox is this: the more you seek attention, the less you are yourself, and the less you are yourself, the less meaningful your work becomes. But when you turn inward, when you act from your truth without asking for approval, the work begins to carry weight. It resonates, it reveals, not because you shouted, but because you spoke with authenticity. The distraction of attention often arises from a wound, a place inside where we felt unseen, unloved, or unheard. And so we attempt to fill the emptiness by amplifying our visibility. But no amount of applause can heal what only inner integration can. This healing does not come from more attention, but from deeper awareness. The path back is not easy. It requires silence, it requires solitude, and it requires the courage to be misunderstood, to choose your truth over their praise. You must become willing to be invisible, if that is what it takes to be real. This kind of inner integrity is rare. It demands that you no longer act as a mirror to others, but as a vessel of something greater, something emerging from within, not imposed from without. And that something cannot be measured in likes or followers or fleeting praise. It can only be known in the quiet conviction that your work is aligned with your soul. Those who change the world rarely begin by trying to impress it. They begin by withdrawing, going into the desert, the wilderness, the cave to face the self. And when they return, they do so not as entertainers, but as bearers of truth. That truth does not beg for attention. It commands respect silently, steadily. This is the invitation. Turn your gaze away from the crowd and back toward the work. Let your focus deepen. Let your motives purify. Let your actions be guided not by what others will think, but by what you know to be necessary. Attention will come and go, but the self, the deep inner self, remains. And it is from that place that the most enduring work is born. In that sacred space, you'll find clarity. In that stillness, you'll find peace. And in that solitude, you'll remember, you were never meant to be the echo of others' applause. You were meant to be the origin of your own sound. 5. Consistency beats noise. The world is loud. It thrashes and clamors with voices rising and falling, each one fighting to be heard. Noise, in all its forms, is seductive. It promises attention, relevance, momentum. But what it cannot offer is meaning, and what it cannot sustain is transformation. In contrast, consistency is quiet. It is the heartbeat beneath the noise. It is not dramatic nor dazzling. It does not draw eyes or stir crowds. But it endures, and in a world intoxicated by immediacy, anything that endures becomes sacred. There is a fundamental law of the psyche, that depth is not achieved by intensity, but by repetition. What you do once may stir emotion. What you do daily shapes identity. Consistency is the soul's slow carving of form into chaos, the repeated decision to return, to refine, to remember what matters. This is not the path of excitement, but of integration. To be consistent is to become trustworthy first to others, but more importantly to yourself. The psyche longs for order. It longs to trust its own rhythms. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, something within aligns. An inner voice, often silenced or skeptical, begins to speak again. Yes, it says, you are becoming who you claim to be. But consistency is difficult precisely because it is unglamorous. It lacks the dopamine of novelty. It does not feed the ego. It does not provide the high of quick praise. It is repetition, and repetition demands devotion. It is spiritual discipline disguised as routine. And this is what separates the wanderer from the wayfarer. One dabbles, the other walks. Noise, by contrast, is reactive. It arises quickly and fades just as fast. It is a burst of energy that seeks to overwhelm, to distract, to dominate. It promises results without process. But whatever is built on noise must be maintained by noise, and that is a burden the soul cannot bear. You become enslaved to visibility. You forget the silence from which your deepest self speaks. Consistency, however, is built on presence, not performance presence. It says, I am here again. I do the work again. Not because the world demands it, not because someone is watching, but because something within me is being shaped, and that shaping matters more than being seen. It is in this repetition that mastery begins. Not just the mastery of a craft, but the mastery of the self. The chaotic impulses, laziness, distraction, fear, they begin to lose their power in the face of steady action. Each day you show up, you reclaim a piece of your will from the unconscious. You say to the darkness, I will not be ruled by you. There is another secret to consistency. It breeds peace, not the peace of inactivity, but the peace of knowing who you are. When your days are built on faithful rhythm, there is less room for existential anxiety. The ego quiets, the self becomes grounded, the work becomes worship, and here lies the paradox. Though consistency is often unseen, it creates results that cannot be ignored. Over time, it outpaces noise. It builds things that last. It gives birth to depth, to character, to legacy. While others sprint from spotlight to spotlight, the consistent one builds a foundation, slowly, quietly, unshakably. So let the world chase noise. Let it exhaust itself with spectacle. You choose the rhythm of return. Choose the path that is walked one step at a time. Choose the work that is done not when it is easy, but when it is time, because the soul does not grow by accident. It grows by return to center, to purpose, to the task. Consistency beats noise not because it is louder, but because it speaks to something deeper, something eternal. And the things that are eternal are never rushed, never shouted. They are formed in silence and revealed in time. 6. Stay humble. Stay working. There is a moment in every inward journey when a threshold appears, the place where progress begins to take form, where effort begins to be rewarded. It is here, strangely, that the true danger arrives, not in failure, but in success, not in obscurity, but in recognition. The danger is pride and the forgetting that comes with it. Humility is not a lack of strength. It is the highest expression of it. It is the knowing that no matter how high one climbs, there are always deeper truths yet unseen, greater forces yet unconquered, and work yet unfinished. To stay humble is to remain a student, even after becoming a teacher. It is to hold mastery in one hand and mystery in the other. The psyche, when it begins to taste achievement, wants to claim it. The ego stirs. It says, this is me, I did this. I am greater now. But this identification with accomplishment is a seduction because it locks you into the persona and away from the self. You become attached to your own image, and the moment you do, the real work halts. To stay working is to remain in motion inwardly and outwardly. It is to resist the illusion that one has arrived, for the soul does not function in straight lines, it spirals, it deepens. Each task completed reveals another layer underneath, another level of refinement. The humble worker knows this. They do not build shrines around their successes. They keep digging. This is not self-deprecation. It is not pretending to be small. It is knowing your place in the vast architecture of existence. It is knowing that even the strongest builder did not invent the stone, that the soil does not yield fruit without seasons of patience, that your hands, though skilled, are merely one part of a greater unfolding. Staying humble also protects the soul, for pride is brittle. It cannot withstand challenge or critique. It crumbles when ignored, but humility is resilient. It bends, adapts, grows. It is not shaken by silence, nor threatened by failure. It remains grounded not in false modesty, but in deep awareness. The wise do not stop working because they have succeeded. They keep working because they understand that the real reward is in the doing, not in the praise, not in the product, but in the process itself. The act of creation is where transformation occurs. It is where the ego dissolves and the deeper self emerges. To stay humble, stay working is to reject stagnation. It is to say, I will not be defined by what I have done, but by what I continue to do. And that doing is not frantic. It is not performative. It is rooted, patient, sacred. Like the monk who sweeps the same floor each day, not because it is dirty, but because it trains the soul in presence. In a culture addicted to recognition, humility looks like invisibility, but invisibility is often where the real power lies. The roots of the tree are never seen, yet they hold the entire structure in place. The most essential work is often the least praised inner work, quiet work, thankless work. But it is this work that sustains all else. Staying humble also creates space to listen, to learn, to grow. Pride closes the ears. It believes it already knows. But humility asks questions. It seeks out the unknown, and in that seeking it is renewed. There will always be moments when your name is spoken, when your work is recognized. Do not fear those moments, but do not live for them either. Accept them with gratitude, then return to the task. Let the applause pass through you like wind through leaves. Let it not stick. Let it not shape. For the real journey is not toward greatness, but toward wholeness. The quiet path is the deep path in a world obsessed with speed, spectacle, and sound. We have forgotten something essential. The greatest transformations happen in silence. The path of working hard in silence is not a denial of ambition, it is the refining fire of it. It strips away the false urgency to be seen and instead calls us inward, toward authenticity, discipline, and purpose. Each keynote was a doorway. Silence builds focus reminded us that only in stillness can we gather the scattered fragments of ourselves and direct them with clarity. Let results speak called us to live in alignment so deeply that our work speaks louder than our voices ever could. Discipline grows in the dark taught us that the soul is strengthened not in applause, but in the quiet repetitions no one sees. Attention is a distraction warned of the ego's hunger to be fed by eyes, and offered instead the peace of being rooted in inner truth. Consistency beats noise revealed that depth is carved not by intensity, but by daily devotion, the sacred power of return. And finally, stay humble, stay working reminded us that no matter how high we climb, we must always kneel at the altar of the work. These are not just ideas, they are invitations, invitations to live differently, to become not performers of life, but participants in its depth, to abandon the desperate need to be noticed and instead embody a deeper strength, the strength to build, to endure, and to become. This quiet path is not easy. It will not feed your ego. It will not guarantee applause, but it will lead you back to yourself, to a version of you that is undistracted, unshakable, and whole. And when you arrive there, you will no longer need to prove anything. You will be the proof.